Today on the show, I have Megan Reamer, and we are talking about all things summer snacking for athletes. So, Megan and her husband Scott actually created Jackson's sweet potato chips. And if you are me or my dad, you are a fan of these. And so, Megan, thank you so much for coming on today. I'd love to just talk a little bit about the brand. I know you have kids that were athletes, and so many moms are like, how do I feed my kids when we're all on the go and going in 50,000 different directions? So, first, I'll let you just say hello. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, and kind of about how y'all started the Jackson's brand.
Hi, Amy. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's great to be here finally. So we started Jackson's Chips because my son, Jackson, my oldest son, I have four kids. He's the oldest. He had this very restrictive diet and he had this rare autoimmune disease that was undiagnosed for the first 12
Wow,
years of mostly
12
the
years.
first 12 years of his life. It was something that started when he was two.
Hmm.
Um, when he could walk and talk, and then he gradually lost that ability. And so it looked like something, it was progressive. It looked like something like multiple sclerosis or ALS, something that robbed him of his
Yeah,
motor skills, gross and fine motor skills. So while we were looking for a diagnosis and finding nothing, we were trying to just solve for, some daily discomfort,
yeah,
this sort of a neurological deterioration that was happening, this loss of skills. And that was very closely tied to his GI issues and
yeah.
like how his belly felt and whether he was digesting food and gaining weight and then sleeping and sort of all of this cascade of challenges. So we just started to play with his diet and we
Hmm.
landed like very early on when he was probably, this started when he was two, and we probably landed on by the time he was five. This would have been in like 2006,
Okay.
2005. Kind of reverse engineered into this keto diet for him. And just like really this philosophy around what his macros were and high fat, high carb, I mean high protein, low carb, right? Very
Hmm.
low carb. That would aggravate everything. So we just started making everything at home to fit that
Wow.
diet because it was not easy to buy things off the shelf
Especially
and
not in 2006.
no, like
Like
you
there
couldn't
just
buy
weren't as
bone
many
broth,
options. Yeah, no.
nothing. We had this constant sort of test kitchen going, like
Yeah.
brewing things, fermenting things, marinating, making broth, right? And so these
Wow.
chips were just one of the things we made because we were using a very specific oil,
Hmm.
coconut and or avocado oil were what we were
Hmm.
using. And we wanted sweet potato chips because, and to use sweet potatoes, I should say, because those were just a kind of a less inflammatory option for him
Hmm.
we than a white potato. And that's what we were trying to do, create this low inflammation diet and
Yeah.
something he would not react to. So that's really the root of how we even started making them, and then we continued to make them in our own home. And as some of those other products that we were making became available on the
Yeah.
shelf and we could buy them very easily, these chips still didn't. And it cooked in like using a sweet potato, cooked in the oil we wanted. So we decided like in 2012, 2013 to just start a company and like I was very naive and nonchalant about it. My husband was way more practical and understood the economics around it. And I
Yeah.
was just sort of like in this very mom space of, we've had this sick child, we have this story to tell. This is a really positive way to do it. Like the economics will fall into place. Like who cares about all that stuff? We'll
Yeah.
just tell the story. And my husband's like, I care about it. I mean, I think we need to like know what we're doing. And he had a real job, like a real career job for a long time, even once we started this. And um, so we just decided to try it and see what happened and see if anybody liked them really. And
Hmm.
what we found was that there were so many people on this spectrum of why they were looking for a healthy snack and a
Yeah.
different version of what was out there already and currently. And so, they found us, and that's kind of the very like beginning of this business and how we even started it.
I love that. And I know we were talking before we came on that y'all live in a very small town. And so to think that you're starting an entire like very popular now, sweet potato chip business. Most people would think, how is that even possible? So I'm just interested for you to hear a little bit behind, like, what were your first steps? Like, how did you start? Like, okay, we're making sweet potato chips in our kitchen. Huh. I wonder how we
Yeah,
can do a
exactly.
bit. I wonder. I mean, I am a business owner, so I'm a idea creator and thinking through like how did you get to that stage? Was it a short process, a long process?
It was about a year long, I would say. And so,
Okay.
yes, you're right. We live in a tiny little mountain town in Colorado. The population, it's at 9,000 feet, the elevation of our town. And then there are only about 2,500 full-time people
Okay.
here. So it's small. I mean, it really
Yeah.
swells in the summer and in the winter
Yeah.
months for skiing. But we had a hard time like
Yeah.
finding the supplies. So finding the
Hmm.
potatoes, we were able to source a lot of them in Colorado, actually.
Ah,
Um, like fun fact, there's a lot of potato farms in Colorado. There's this really fertile valley called the San Luis Valley. And like the National Potato Council is located there. There's just a
yep.
lot of very old generational potato farms there.
Hmm.
Grow
There's
for
land, right? There's
there's
land to grow
land.
them.
What we were talking about earlier,
Yeah.
like lack of land available places, but there's a lot of land and it's preserved and it's just really fertile soil. So we were able to
Yeah.
source a lot of our potatoes from there, so local.
Hmm.
Um, and then our oil we were just buying in big drums and,
Okay.
just doing this by hand for like a year,
Yeah.
slicing the potatoes with a mandolin. We got packaging, put them in a package, weighed
Hmm.
them, sealed them, shipped them. We did all that stuff ourselves. So it was really helpful because, we reached this point within like 3 months of doing this that we had shipped these with no sort of, there was definitely no like Google SEO
Right.
search profiling happening.
Right.
This was
Right.
like 2012 and
Yeah.
2013. We only had a Facebook page and we had like a bare bones website where people could place an order and we'd get it. And so we were making chips every night. We got a commercial kitchen in our
Yeah.
town. We were schlepping all of our supplies there, bringing them home, kind of like recruiting one of our kids who was old enough for like child labor, or babysitting the other ones.
Yeah. Or babysitting with
And
skill development.
yes, like it was a kind of a I don't know. It was definitely like a bit of a jury rigged situation because we were just sort of seeing if people liked them
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
did and we weren't expecting it. And so we couldn't really meet the demand. And so within several months we had shipped everywhere and to like 10 different countries. And that's when my husband
Wow.
said, "Oh wait, I think like we might have a business
We might
idea
have
here.
something here. Yeah,
Like
that's
I think
awesome.
there's some meat on the bone. Let's figure out what
Yeah.
this." So then, kind of 9 months into making them by hand, my husband was getting tendonitis really bad in his elbow from like this mandolin. So we knew we needed to
Oh.
scale this up from this
Hmm.
process that we were
Yeah.
doing. So we found a co-manufacturer locally in Denver, which is about 200 miles from us, and just started working with them. And so all of that pre-work we did, making them by
Hmm.
hand, putting that effort in, putting that time in, that was the reason that this co-manufacturer took a risk with us and like
Yeah.
even decided to consider working with us. Like we had no business working with this facility, this manufacturer. They were making chips for like Trader Joe's and Kroger
Yeah.
and big businesses and they were intrigued by what we were
Yeah.
doing. They were intrigued by the reason we were doing it, like all about our son.
Yeah.
They said, "Okay, come on in." And they liked that we had been making them by hand and knew this process really well because
Hmm.
when we first started making them and putting them in a bag, we were using coconut oil, and that was a completely different process. Like that oil is fussier, very different type of
Yeah.
oil than like, a sunflower or safflower or the
Hmm.
oils that they were using. And so
Yeah.
we had to reinvent this process with them.
Yeah.
And that whole thing it probably took about 15 months. And we just sort of like kept going with it because we were getting some positive feedback from customers, from retailers who wanted to try them out. They were
Hmm.
reaching out to us. And so we knew that we were in this little sweet spot and like,
Yeah.
could we expand this and what did that look like? So that's what we did.
I love this story so much, like, because it's such an organic process. And so you said that y'all used organic, I'm sorry, not organic, y'all used coconut oil and avocado oil together, or were y'all bouncing back and forth? And I'm also interested out of my own dietitian world. When you were making them at home first, were you baking them? Like, how were you cooking them? Where did you get the idea for the chip, or were you actually frying them? How did that? I mean, for those people that don't know, both coconut oil and avocado oil have very high smoke points, which means you can cook at a high temperature or fry and then keep their structure without causing any trans fats typically. So that's why those are often used to cook at such a high level. So there's everybody's science lesson for today.
Yeah. Yes. We initially just used organic coconut oil.
Okay.
That was what we were cooking them in at home. And
Yeah.
so, we had been making them way before we tried to put them in a bag and even think
Right.
about selling them.
Right.
We had perfected that process. I mean, at a certain point, we were like, when we were just kind of experimenting and making them for our family, we were using lard, we were using tallow, we were
Yeah.
using coconut oil, we were using avocado oil. Like, we were just kind of flipping between all these
Yeah.
oils. When we first launched in a bag, we were using organic coconut oil, and we, yes, it does have a high smoke point. The interesting thing was that when we made them, and even now with using avocado oil in our process, it's actually at a very low temperature and it's a longer
Oh,
fry time. So
okay.
like, our coconut oil, we never got that temperature above maybe 300, but it
Yeah.
sat like around 250, 275.
But it
And so
keeps the integrity of the oil. That's what a lot of people don't realize about like frying is when it goes to really high temperatures. That's oftentimes where you see trans fat, which is inflammatory. If you cook
yes,
lower at lower smoke points, you typically higher smoke point oil at a lower temperature
can.
to your point. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that
Keeps
was
the
where, like
integrity.
you said, it was the same as,
Hmm.
sort of drinking avocado or drinking coconut oil
Yeah.
based on what temperature we were frying it at. And
Yeah.
so we fried them, we didn't bake them. We had like this tiny little town we live in. One of our good friends was a sheet metal guy.
Uh-huh.
And so he fabricated these custom pans for us that were
Okay.
wide and shallow so that we had a lot of
Yeah.
surface area. And, we played around with that. We just like throw potato slices in.
Hmm.
Um, so we eventually changed over the line to all avocado oil. That's pretty
Hmm.
recent, actually. Like
Yeah.
within the past sort of 2 to 3 years for
Yep.
Jackson's that
Because
we're
when I got introduced, you had both.
yes,
Yeah,
we
there was
had both.
coconut oil and avocado oil. Because my dad
Yeah,
was
so
like,
we
"Ooh, let
started
me
with
see which one I like
coconut.
better."
Yeah, I know. They taste different.
Yeah,
And
they
so
do.
we
They
started with
do.
coconut, had both, and now are
Hmm.
fully avocado. And
Okay.
that's sort of some of that's market driven, some of that's
Yeah.
taste profile, some of that's supply chain driven,
Yeah.
right? There's all these different variables that go into that.
Hmm.
And, to be true to our brand and maintain why we do what we do and
Yeah.
why we want to offer a certain type of snack to
Yeah.
customers, right?
Right. So let me ask you, and then I'm gonna make a pivot, but staying with like the production and getting it all going. Y'all ended up on Shark Tank, correct?
Yes, we did.
Okay. At what point of the process was that at? And
Yeah,
what did
that
that
was
do for the
about
brand out of curiosity?
it created an enormous exposure
Hmm.
and it continues to have legs and momentum. Rerun is going to happen for
Ah,
Shark Tank. So when we get this spike in orders, like online
hmm.
orders or Amazon orders,
Usually why?
we can trace it to a
How
rerun
funny.
of Shark Tank.
How funny.
And again, there's no insight into that. Like sometimes I'll get a
Yeah.
text from a friend who's like, "I just saw you got Shark Tank again." But when that happened, when we decided to do that, it was about 4 years into our
Okay.
company's business
Yeah.
and into our business and our life cycle. And we were already pretty big. In fact, we said to the Shark Tank crew, the ABC crew,
Hmm.
we think we were too big. We already have national distribution. We're at
Yeah.
like 10 billion in revenue. Like we're beyond this sort of idea
Yeah.
and need that type of support. But we did need an investment at that point in time. And
To keep
so
going. Yeah.
for us, like we got a great investment. We worked with a great shark. He's still part of our business. He one of his biggest deals that he found on Shark Tank and just exited was Poppy
Oh,
beverages.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, so
So
they
he
were
likes functional ingredients.
exactly. That's exactly
Love it.
right.
Yeah.
Um, and so for us, it really put us on the map, and it
Yeah.
certainly turned on our e-commerce and our D2C sales, like our consumer-driven sales, as far as Amazon, our website. Like
Yeah.
it really just sort of propelled that to a place that we
Yeah.
would never have been able to try to do on our own without that huge
That's
media
awesome.
exposure.
That is awesome. I just love the evolution of the whole story. Okay. So here's my pivot in that this was also, or your oldest son, who is no longer with us, but Jackson, he was your oldest. This is your like first kid trying to
Yeah.
figure out all of this. And like as a mom, I feel like I'm not a mom, but all the moms that listen, I feel like moms sometimes just get so defeated by like, oh, my kid needs this. My kid doesn't like that. What do we do about this? How do we find healthy snacks? Like, as y'all were, I'm just interested personally, like, as you were creating this, and obviously very vision based, and I'm sure like a calling, honestly, because it was helping your son. Like, as a mom, like, what was that like, both managing your son and then additionally other children, as well as like building a brand? Because you're building something that's so great, but it's coming from a struggle. And I just think that that's so interesting.
Yeah, it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
girl.
I
Because then you kept
it was
having more children,
yeah, so
kids
I had
and
three more
children.
children. I think, you know, the perspective of what we were going through with him and the
Yeah.
struggle he was going through and trying to find a diagnosis for him
Yeah.
and understand what we were confronting, like starting this business and growing this and trying to manage all of the challenges for the business
Hmm.
didn't seem that hard compared
Yeah.
to this existence that we'd had with
Yeah.
him
It's all
and what
relative,
he was
right?
going
Yeah.
through, right? Like on one level, so that didn't seem too hard. And on another level, like we almost felt like it was our obligation or our
Yeah.
duty to share his story and to
Yeah.
turn this into something really positive because it had been so hard for so
Yeah.
long for him and for
Right.
us and for other kids. And he was the center of our world, and like
Yeah.
everything revolved around him. If he was having a good day, if he wasn't, if he could
Yeah.
travel, if he couldn't, like what he could eat, what he couldn't, that defined where we
Hmm.
could go and whether we could go
Yeah.
anywhere. And so, it just felt like the right way to share what he was going through. Like he was still alive when we started this company and
Right.
was very much
Right.
a part of it. And then once he unexpectedly passed away, like he was part of an experimental drug trial and he passed away from it. Then it became for us his legacy, and
Yeah.
we
Totally.
had to keep going and we had to keep pushing forward. And so, all that other stuff that we dealt with, that you do deal with when you
Yeah.
start a business, all of the challenges, which there are
Yep.
so many, it's so
Yes.
defeating at many turns, like multiple turns, even
Hmm.
throughout one day, right? You're like, oh,
Yeah.
I love this. Oh, I hate this. Oh my gosh, I gotta quit, right? Like just such this
Yep.
roller coaster of emotions. That all just kind of paled in comparison to really the mission and the passion around why we were
Yeah.
doing what we were doing. So we were kind
I
of
love
lucky
that.
in that
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, I heard it said, and I've heard it said a few times. And someone said the other day, entrepreneurialism is the only, like one of the only areas that you can feel sheer terror and 100% exhilaration in like a 24-hour time period because it ebbs and it flows so much. But what I have found, and even just like in my own business, I think when you're just like doing something, doing work, okay, fine, making money, it's one thing. But when it's a calling, or for you, like your son's legacy, like in my sports nutrition world, it's like expanding access to sports nutrition. How do we help kids fuel their bodies and families, and what does that look like? It's interesting how the other things, like you can get through them because people, oh, you're going to burn out. Oh, you're good, that's going to be too hard, or oh, whatever it is. But I feel like when you're driven by a calling and a vision, it just changes everything. I mean,
Yeah,
it
you're
sounds
right.
like same for y'all.
For sure. I mean, it justifies those long nights and the
Yeah.
stress and the terror
Yeah.
of it all. And I don't know if that's good or bad because
Right.
it
Yeah.
does
Yeah.
affect you
Yeah.
in a
It
lot
does.
of ways,
Yeah.
physically,
Yeah.
mentally, emotionally, but it allowed us to stay in it and
Yeah.
maintain what we're doing and try to keep pushing it forward.
I love that. Okay, so obviously, sweet potato chips. as a mom, now I always tell people this time of year, so we're taping this, where it's June and it's travel time. You have a bunch of kids. Your kids all, you said they played sports, etc. So, like, as a mom, amidst all of this, like, how are you managing? Like, how do I help my kids, like, feel their performance, enjoy healthy or what I like to call like nutrient rich snacks? A lot of times, I think parents in general, moms and dads, feel a little defeated trying to do all the things. And where do you let kids, eat their favorite foods? And when do we try to fuel performance and recovery? So I'm all about trying to find better versions of your kids' favorite foods. Of course, I mean, eat a cupcake sometimes and pizza, who cares? But for the majority of the time, trying to focus on helping families find those nutrient rich snacks, and Jackson's is obviously one of those. So, how have you gone about that with your children that are athletes, managing the business and looking for healthy alternatives for yourself and your family?
Well, I mean, I think what you just said, like looking for
Yeah.
healthier alternatives, right?
Yeah.
So I know the things my kids like to eat,
Hmm.
chips, fruit snacks,
All children, all
fuel up,
children.
all the stuff, right?
Yeah.
All of the things. And my goal is to just try to find the best version of
Yeah.
that for taste, for ingredient profile, for
Hmm.
nutritional profile, right? So, it's a challenge. There's so
Yeah.
many more options out there though
Yes.
than there has ever
Ever
been
have
in
been.
the past.
Yes, I agree.
Which makes it really easy. Like when my older daughter was growing up, I would send her these snacks so that she had kind of the right things, the right
Yeah.
fuel. She wasn't just eating like a box of snacks that someone had brought on the bus for
Hmm.
their trip,
Yeah.
to an away game, right? And I wanted to, it was less of a control thing. I just wanted to try to fuel her in the right
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Give
Um,
her the right energy.
Give her the
Exactly.
right energy, right? And so
Hmm.
something that was going to maintain some of that energy level and not
Hmm.
just, have this peak and valley, right? And so
Hmm.
it was much, much harder to source what some of those options were when she was
Yeah.
growing up. 22. So even 10 years ago,
Yeah.
8 years ago, it was hard. So that's kind of what I try to do personally. And I know when I speak to people about, our chips, for instance,
Yeah.
and the sweet potato, like we do have white potato chips, just regular kettle
That's
potato
right.
chips out
Yeah.
now. We also just launched veggie straws. They're all cooked in
I've not tried
avocado.
these yet. Oh, on
Right,
the
so
list,
like,
on the list.
yeah, they're very, very new, but that's basically, what Jackson's as a brand asks itself. Like, how can we take something that's already out there and we know that sells well and has good
Yeah.
performance, and how do we elevate that? How do
Yeah.
we swap out a few of those
Yep.
ingredients, make them true to our brand and true to what
Hmm.
we know that we're comfortable and that we support putting
Yeah.
out on the shelf, and have that just be a different, aka better, you can say, maybe not,
Yeah.
but at least a
Sure.
different option for somebody who's looking
Yep.
for swapping some of those things out. So I think those swaps are really important. Like,
Hmm.
your child wants to sit there eating chips like every other
Right.
child plus or every other child on the sideline. So how do you just provide an elevated version of what that is? And
Yes.
you look at the fat, you look at the protein, and you look at the carb in it.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
that's like, okay, what's the carb source? Okay, it's a sweet potato versus a white potato. For some people, that makes a big difference. For my
Hmm.
son, that made a big difference. What type of oil are you using? For some people, that makes a big difference as
Yep.
well, right? And so I think those swaps are really important, and that's really where my first look is on, what can I bring
Yeah.
to this team
Yeah.
that meets the needs of what they want to drink, but is something I feel good about providing, and it's
Yep.
not full of artificial or dyes or
Yeah.
something that I
Yeah.
I wouldn't consume myself.
Right, exactly. No, I love that because it's all about kind of fitting the food into a performance or active driven lifestyle. And we know people love chips. I mean, look around. And one of the things I always recommend to parents and families is I'm like, when you're choosing your options, a lot of times people always assume, what do we have to take out? What do we have to take out? And I'm like, what can you add in? So when you add in a sweet potato chip, you're adding in some nutrients, the beta carotene that makes it that beautiful orangey color. And even with potatoes, a lot of people don't realize that potatoes potatoes and sweet potato nutrition is very similar in nature. And they don't realize that like potatoes and sweet potatoes have vitamin C, they have fiber. And so looking for how do you choose, to your point, like what I like to term a better for you option. And cooking in avocado oil where that's going to be an unsaturated oil that doesn't have as much saturated or trans fat. So I love how y'all have done that. I bet your children and their friends have eaten a lot of sweet potato chips
Yeah,
in their
they've been our
time.
taste testers, and
Oh, I bet.
they haven't always liked it. It hasn't always tasted great either. Like they've gotten the
Yeah.
first versions of things, and so it's a
Ah.
bit of a hard position to be in sometimes.
Hmm.
But I've been thinking about while we've been talking. My youngest son, plays hockey and lacrosse, and
Okay. Yep.
everyone in our town knows us as like the family that owns the chip
The
company, the
chip
people that
company.
do the chips, right? Oh, you're the chip
Ah.
people. And so he was playing a game, sort of 3 hours away. I drove
Yeah.
there and it was so hot compared to where we live. It was like these boys
Hmm.
were melting. And so I ran to the grocery store. I went to get, drinks and things that they would need, like no sugar, zero sugar vitamin water,
Yeah.
stuff like
Sure.
that, right?
Yeah.
And I happen to have a few boxes, like we sell multi-pack boxes of our
Yeah.
chips at
Yeah.
Costco. And so we do like a 30 pack of our sweet potato chips. So I happen to have just a few of those boxes in the car. And I bring them over to the sideline. And my son, he comes over, he's like, Mom, like nobody wants to eat sweet potato chips. I mean, come on. They're tired of
Oh,
them.
they do want to
And I
eat
said,
one.
well, we'll see what happens. Like, I'm just going to leave him here. We'll
Yeah,
see.
we have a snack. It's a high quality carb. Let's do it. You hockey people need all the carbs you can get.
Exactly. And like, it's such a
Ah,
great carb because
and
it's such an even sort of carb source, like
yeah,
energy source, like
yeah,
it maintains that level of energy in the
yeah.
carb
And
that
people don't
like
realize it's
there's
got
sort of
little fiber. Sweet potatoes and potatoes have a few grams of
exactly.
protein. It's very interesting people's conception of potatoes and sweet potatoes and then what the actual nutrition is. So I will give it to you. And a little salt when you're an athlete is your
A
friend.
little salt. So it was so hot. These kids needed
Yeah,
salt so
yeah.
bad. They inhaled
Oh,
like probably
believe it.
90 bags of chips that I put on the sideline within about 10 minutes. They were just
Oh,
gobbling them
oh,
up.
I'm
And
sure.
it was really funny to, prove
That is
my
hilarious.
15-year-old son wrong. Who knows everything.
Yes, 100%. Nothing like a mom that shows up with a bunch of chips. I mean, you're like the team, you were nominated team mom for that trip.
Well, they were grateful. I mean, they were hungry, but
Oh my gosh.
it's just a different option
Yeah.
than maybe some other snacks that
Yeah.
provide like a shorter sort of
Yeah.
fuel cycle,
Yeah.
right? Like that's
Yeah.
going to be a much longer energy source than maybe some other options available.
Yeah, I love it. And like as a parent, like you're doing something good for your kids when you're bringing things that are higher quality, have good ingredients, things that you can feel. You give them to your kids, so you're glad to give them to others. Okay, so talk to me a little bit about where you see Jackson's going. So you mentioned the veggie straws, which I'm very interested in. So do they have a sweet potato component and then there's some other veggies making the veggie straws, or talk to me a little. I've got to check these out.
Yeah, they're a veggie base, and so they
Okay.
have real veggies in them,
Yeah.
and they're a base that is kind of this. It's been a lot of work actually to try to
Yeah.
figure out how to create the right formula and the right
Hmm.
ingredient deck
Yeah.
for to maintain and stay true to our brand and what
Yeah.
we want.
Yeah.
So the type of flour, rice flour we were going to use, the type
Hmm.
of possibly cassava flour or
Yeah.
not, right? This require the type of
Yeah.
veggie, how much of each of those we were going to provide for the right nutritional
Yeah.
profile. So there's sort of this mix of all of those
All
things.
the things. Yeah. Are you all still heavily
And
involved in the development of the products, you and your husband?
oh yeah, we stay really
I love
involved
it. I
in
love it.
Jackson's and the
Yeah.
business and anything that all of it really. It's
Yeah.
all really still very fun for us and just even
Hmm.
sort of the discussion around the development of new products and what makes
Hmm.
sense. And then of course, the team like looks into data and
Yeah.
understanding where
Market
opportunities
stuff. Yeah.
exist in that category. And then adjacent to that is this R&D process where we're able to do that
Yeah.
in-house. this team that, we
Yeah.
can really kind of work on what the profile looks like and what the
Yeah.
ingredients look like and what percentage of each and really get to
Mhm.
not just the base taste of like, for instance, say the sweet potato, like once we fry the sweet potato, what does that taste like?
Yeah.
Pre any kind of seasoning or even any salt. Like, are we
Mhm.
making this correctly? And is this a
Yeah.
viable product? And then start to layer in, you know, what kind of seasonings can we use with this? What kind of taste profile can
Love
we
it.
have? What's the crunch taste like, right? So
Yeah.
that process is an in-house process for us, and it's fantastic. Like we have our own facility in Wisconsin, and so that has
Okay.
made a huge difference in the brand's function, really,
Yeah.
in what we're able
Yeah.
to do, offer, make, create, all of those things.
I love it. And I just love that it's a family business. Like I came from a family business. Like I have my own business. I love the concept of the family business. Okay, so kind of closing out. As you, mom of four, busy entrepreneur, feeding your athletes, feeding kids, what would you tell parents like as an experiential person of snacks and sports and, momming? How would you encourage a mom, a parent to help better feed their kids I would say on a regular basis? I'm all about, like I said, I always call it the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, aim to fuel your body like you should. 20% of the time, by all means, have french fries and a milkshake. But if the majority of the time you're focusing on better for you ingredients, then you're usually going to have better energy. You're going to recover better. Your kids are going to feel better. So, what is your mom backslash parent advice?
I would say what I think we've talked about
Yeah.
already is really look for places that you can swap out, some one, two, three
Hmm.
different ingredients for what you're trying to accomplish. So
Yeah.
you're trying to fuel your kids before and after their activities
Hmm.
that they're doing. What are they currently eating? What do sort of don't try to lead them somewhere they're not, meet them where they are
Yep.
and what are they eating? Take a look at that, take a look at the ingredients, and then how do you swap it out for something,
Yeah.
that might offer something different. So if they're
Yes.
eating fruit snacks with, you know, dyes in them or something that you don't like, then
Hmm.
how do you swap that out for, a more natural or an elevated version of that?
Right.
That's probably the easiest place
Yep.
um, to try to make some changes. And then, don't be too hard on yourself.
Yeah.
Like you
Totally.
said, the 80-20 rule.
Hmm.
I'll go in and get a fountain Coke at a McDonald's
Yeah.
just like the next person. I don't do it all the time, but when I
Right.
do,
Exactly.
great, right? And so that's okay. Like you can't be too hard on yourself and you have to, take it as it comes. And if one
Yeah.
day doesn't work, then just try the next day.
Yep. I love that advice. And I think it's encouraging because I feel like parents oftentimes get so like, I'm trying and they don't want this or they don't want that. But I love that Jackson's offers a better for you version of chips, which I think might be a kid's favorite food. I mean, if I had to guess, I think it would probably go and lots of adults' favorite food as well. So thank you for coming on. I mean, you can find Jackson's now. I mean, I feel like everywhere I see it, but talk to us about where we can find Jackson's. We'll drop it in the show notes, both social media, stores, anything that you want to add in.
Yeah, sure. So one of our biggest, sellers where we sell a lot of chips
Mhm.
is Costco. That's where
Mhm.
people find us. That's where they purchase Whole Foods, natural grocers,
Yep.
Sprouts. Most natural retailers for sure will carry at least one product, but many
Mhm.
carry multiple products of Jackson's that we offer. Now we're going to be launching these veggie straws into
Yeah.
retailers as well. And then we've got some, sort of more, I don't want to say conventional because I think all of these stores really carry
Yeah.
such a range
Wide
and a
range.
breadth
Yeah.
of products, but stores like Wegmans and Safeway and Albertsons, Kroger,
Yeah.
right? So, some of those big retailers that you'd think of, you can find
Mhm.
us there as well. And then certainly online, our website, as well as
Yep.
Amazon.
Yep. And then social media across the board.
Social media across the board, it's at Snack Jackson's.
Okay.
And
Perfect.
so we used to be at Jackson's Chips. You can still kind of redirect to
Hmm.
us on Instagram, but
I
we have
like it.
changed our name to at Snack Jackson's because we offer more than just chips at this point.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, as a sports dietitian, I would like to say thank you for making, finding ways to make better for you snacks and better. I think it's so important when brands really look into that and stay true to their values. And I love that yours is really more of a legacy than just a snack product. But I love it. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll drop everything in the show notes. And if you're out there and you need a summer chip for your road trip, your airplane trip, wherever you are, definitely pick up Jackson's wherever you can find them.
Thank you, Amy. It's been great talking with you. Thanks so much for your support.
Yeah, thanks, Megan.